Big Zaddy arrives in Boston, and we're talking about how the kids looked at development camp last week.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Tuesday, July 9th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more all summer long. FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And before we get started, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my dad jokes, hockey thoughts at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Bruins fan. I've been covering this team for various outlets for 20 years or so. Worked full-time for The Score as a full-time hockey news writer. And I've been hosting this podcast since 2019. And speaking of those digits, Nikita Zadorov arrived in Boston on Monday and was introduced by general manager Don Sweeney with a number 91 jersey. And why 91? Well, he has worn number 16 most of his career, including with the Colorado Avalanche, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Calgary Flames. But he couldn't use it in Vancouver. It was retired for Trevor Linden, and he can't use it in Boston because that is retired as well for Rick Middleton. So why 91? It's an upside down 16. And he will become just the second player in Bruins history to wear number 91. Of course, the previous player was Marc Savard, who played for the Bruins from 2006-07 to 2010-11 before his career was sadly cut short due to injuries. And Savard was actually one of Zadorov's coaches with the Calgary Flames before he was traded to the Vancouver Canucks. I'm sure Savard giving Zadorov his blessing to wear number 91. I saw some suggestion that, maybe it's disrespectful or 91 should have been retired. I mean, Marc Savard was a fan favorite to be sure, part of another huge free agent signing day. You recall 2006, the Bruins signed both Marc Savard and Zdeno Chara on free agent day. This year, a Lindholm and Zadorov. We wonder if it will amount to the same kind of success down the road. And Zadorov really seems to be thinking so, because he said he signed with the Bruins because he wants to have his best chance to win a championship. A 6-year, $30 million contract, a $5 million AAV. He said he's really invested in what he does, putting his heart into everything. And right now he's here for 6 years and wants to put his heart into being a Bruin and trying to win a Stanley Cup. He's already endeared himself to the fans by making it known he doesn't want to be called Big Z, where he's been called elsewhere. People are calling him Zaddy. My suggestion, what I'm sticking with, is Big Zaddy. You get the big, because he is a big man, but not the Z specifically. You go with the Zaddy. It also has a bit of a New England tie-in with Adam Sandler, of course, starring in Big Daddy all those years ago. If the Bruins, of course, are going to win a Stanley Cup in the next handful of years, Zadorov will almost certainly play a key role in that. General Manager Don Sweeney saying back on July 1st that the presence he brings is important to them. He's going to play a lot of top four minutes in the playoffs against top guys, and his game seems to grow, and he's able to step up in these big moments. Now, his ties to Boston go far back in his NHL career. He said his first goal came against the Bruins in just his second game with the Sabres, and he remembered Brad Marchand, now captain of the Bruins, being on the ice for that and taking the minus. So he's going to be sure to remind him of that when they meet. Marchand, David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy were among the first to reach out to Zadorov when he was signed, which is a sign of good leadership there for the Bruins. Zadorov has also worked with Jim Montgomery in the past when he was coaching at the University of Denver, and Zadorov played for the Avs. Montgomery would host players to skate with the Pioneers during the offseason, and he got a strong impression of his future coach. Having Lindholm come on, Zadorov said it definitely helps when your friend signs with the same team. He's excited for him. A really good addition. Excited to have him on his team once again, for sure. Of course, they were teammates in Calgary and then with the Canucks. So Zadorov making it clear that he wants to be in Boston. He did not have to come and travel up and make an appearance, but he wanted to. He jumped on the Instagram, was answering some questions. Of course, he calls the U.S. home right now, as he has been rather outspoken about Russia's efforts in the Ukraine, their war campaign in the Ukraine, and he does not feel comfortable going home at the moment, which I fully respect, which is really cool of him to be outspoken like that, where other Russian NHLers, quite frankly, have not. So Zadorov, introduced by general manager Don Sweeney, number 91. I'm okay with it. Mark Savard wore that number so well. Had his name on the Stanley Cup. Hopefully Zadorov can as well. And again, I'm sure Savard would sign off on it, having coached Zadorov and knowing what kind of player and person that he is. All right, coming up as the podcast continues, we're going to look back at last week's development camp and talk about a few players who stood out and who we may see on the NHL roster at some point in the near or distant future. I love me some sports, and I love them so much I never want them to stop. But now that the NHL and NBA seasons are over, we get fewer games. But the sports, they're not sportsing like we want them to. FanDuel is letting us keep the sports going, though, whenever we want. All we have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime we're in the mood. All summer long, FanDuel is hooking up customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com to start making the most of your summer. Look at the options for Major League Baseball, odds, player props, and more. FanDuel.com. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and 24/7, 7 days a week, you can stream the Locked On Sports Today YouTube channel. News, analysis, opinions from all across the Locked On Sports universe, free and available on YouTube and the Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, so we have yet to touch on a development camp, and I'm going to be completely honest here. I don't get super fussed about development camp because a lot of it, quite frankly, is guys that we probably won't see up at the NHL level with some really deep cut prospects, and the Bruins prospect pool, as it stands, is not really as deep as some other clubs. In fact, you're going to see a lot of prospect pool rankings coming out over the summer, including on the Locked On NHL Prospects show. And I've already seen the Bruins 30th out of 32, 32nd out of 32. The prospect pool is pretty thin after the likes of Matt Poitras, who we'll talk about here in a moment, Fabian Lysell, Mason Lohrei. That's pretty much the extent of what there is to get excited about. And all three of those guys could be on the NHL roster come opening night. What about the future? Well, the Bruins, of course, went out and made a deal with the Ottawa Senators to acquire a first-round pick here in 2024. And they used that to select Dean Letourneau. And he was at development camp. All 6'7" of him, stands out immediately. By all accounts, he's got strong skating, impressive reach, a sharp wrist shot, and you can see glimpses, hopes, dreams of developing along the same lines as a Tage Thompson in Buffalo. And Adam McQuaid, current player development coordinator, was quoted by Connor Ryan in Boston.com as saying, obviously it's hard not to notice Letourneau at his size. Quote, his calmness in and around the net, good hands, just a big frame. When you look at him, he's still such a young kid. You probably just get more of an appreciation when you're on the ice for how big he is and how smooth he is with the puck. End quote. He will need to add some more muscle to his huge frame. He came up short in a few battle drills against smaller, albeit more seasoned prospects. Getting stronger is a priority for him as he gets ready to play at Boston College in the fall. But as Connor Ryan noted, it's easy to see why the Bruins were enamored with Letourneau's high ceiling when they selected him with the 25th pick. Bruins fans expecting him to be kind of one and done in college probably need to temper expectations. He's probably 2-3 years away from being in consideration to jump up to the Bruins. You look at Tage Thompson's trajectory. It took him a handful of years to really pop, and could be a similar trajectory here for Letourneau, but the potential rewards are very tantalizing indeed. Another guy who stepped up was Oskar Jellvik, and he's a guy that could quite realistically slot into the middle six at some point down the road. He was a 5th-round pick in 2021. He had a breakout sophomore season with the Boston College Eagles last year with 42 points in 41 games in a top 6 role. He's not the biggest guy, 5'10", but Connor Ryan noted he regularly popped throughout development camp, playing a fast and slippery game while routinely putting himself in grade A ice. And McQuaid of Jellvik said he may have had one of the best growth seasons of the group. He was playing with Cutter Gauthier, who was a 5th overall pick in 2022. And he's probably not coming back, but he should still get some opportunities to grow. A big transition coming over the first year from Europe, smaller ice, little things like that. McQuaid said his consistency was the main thing. He played well on a nightly basis. Gauthier, of course, is a really good player, but so is Oskar. And there's no doubt in the Bruins' minds that he can replicate what he did this year coming into this next season. So that is really encouraging. And that's a guy who they might be able to get something out of here as as seasons go on, which would be great from a 5th round pick. Another guy making strides is Riley Duran, a 6th round pick in 2020. He's got a high motor, a heavy shot, and he's looking to make the push for Boston's roster during training camp, but it will be a little tougher considering he will have to beat out the likes of Johnny Beecher, Justin Brazeau, Marcus Delic, Max Jones, Riley Tufte for a regular role in the bottom 6. But he's got the confidence going in. Providence Bruins bench boss Ryan Muganel stressed that Duran has continued to impress the organization's development staff since making the jump from Providence College to Providence Bruins in March. Muganel said he was a lot better than what he was expecting. They were surprised at how well his game has grown and how confident he was in the AHL. He was excellent for the Providence Bruins, a little bit ahead of where they thought he would be at this time, and they're excited about his growth and development as a person, his work ethic, and being a great teammate. So that's a guy to keep an eye on down in Providence for sure this upcoming season. What about younger guys who could and should make an impact at the NHL level? Well, we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. A participant at development camp was Matt Poitras, who is coming off major shoulder surgery and was not able to play down the stretch after appearing in 35 games for the Boston Bruins last season as kind of a surprise addition. I've had said regularly that I thought he would be back in the OHL last season. He impressed in training camp, earned a spot, and is progressing well from that mid-season shoulder surgery. He has put on between 8 and 9 pounds of muscle so far this offseason, and that was a big area of growth for him to be more strong on the puck. He did not participate in the scrimmage to end development camp, but not yet ready to take contact, but ultimately they decided to keep him off the ice just to make sure he was on the right track with his recovery and that he can be ready for training camp. No setbacks, according to Adam McQuaid. They knew coming in that they were going to try and keep him away from contact, but it was a great week for him. He enjoyed getting back out there with the guys, and it was nice to be with guys closer to his age. A lot expected of Poitras here in the upcoming season. Now, that's not to say he's locked in to a spot. There is quite a bit of competition down the middle now with Lindholm. Zaka is expected to move to the wing, but he can still play down the middle. Charlie Coyle, Marcus Delic, Johnny Beecher, Trent Frederick can take reps down the middle. So where Poitras slides in will be a very interesting thing to keep an eye on in training camp, to be sure. My guess is he'll slot in on the third line, but you never know. Maybe he jumps up and plays with Marchand and Geeky, another guy who can play center, to put Coyle down with Frederick, as they have had some good chemistry in the past. A guy who may be ready to step up as well is Fabian Lysell. And although he was not a participant, because he had been there the previous 3 summers, the 21-year-old was a discussion point at development camp, to be sure, because the Bruins are expected to enter training camp with a vacancy on the right side in the top 6. And it's easy to pencil him in. He had 50 points in 56 games for Providence last season before his campaign was shut down due to injury. Don Sweeney had said he was the top candidate to be recalled in the event of injury before his injury. And Ryan Muganel, who had called him out earlier in the season for perhaps not being a team player or playing strong without the puck, he gave him his due credit. He said Lysell had huge steps this past season. Forget how young he is at times. He came in as a 19-year-old. The maturity that he's shown in his game has been great to see. It's been 2 years, and the light started to go on really early on this year. You play well in your own end, it translates to offense, and Mugenel called him a really special player. He's a special kid, and all these offensive gifted players, they have some sort of deficiency, especially defensively, and he's really starting to come along, and he's going to push for a roster spot in training camp, to be sure. So that's really encouraging to hear. And the Bruins need that because, again, they have a big hole in the top 6 that has not been addressed in free agency. They're still waiting to sign Jeremy Swayman. If they have some money left over, perhaps they look at free agent route with a guy like Filip Zadina, Daniel Sprong, maybe Kyler Yamamoto. But it looks like they're looking for that internal push from a guy like Lysell, who at 21 should be able to, he should be on the NHL roster this coming season. There's no reason why he should not be playing at the NHL after being a first-round pick a few years ago. So those were the main points from development camp. Again, thanks to Connor Ryan for that great article to draw from. I, of course, was not able to be in attendance, being up here in Guelph, Ontario. But great to see some of those updates from training camp. And just seeing now, speaking of value signings, the Florida Panthers adding Adam Boqvist to the back end. That could be a nice addition for them. A guy who was not qualified by the Columbus Blue Jackets, but who had been drafted pretty highly in his draft year and was in a conversation with the likes of Evan Bouchard. Could have been a guy that the Bruins should have picked up. Looking at the hockey news here, speaking of prospect rankings, the Boston Bruins featured today, and the headline is Bruins have, what does it say here? Yep, still some deficiencies when it comes to their prospect pool. So that is not great. Tony Ferrari writing that the Bruins, they've been a consistently competitive squad, but that has diminished their playoff pool because you can only, add so much when you're not drafting in the first or second round for years on end. Anyways, that's it for today's episode. Please do subscribe so that you catch each episode daily. We'll be back tomorrow with all the latest on the black and gold. We're going daily for the most part here through the month of July. So please stick with me. And hopefully we get a Jeremy Swayman contract sooner than later. Hope you're all having a great week. Take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you again here next time on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day.